Good morning. Welcome. I'm Ed Black, CEO of CCIA. We really appreciate your all being here. The event that we're having today is our second annual event. The last one was held in Europe. The Information Society Dialogue connected with the Transatlantic Business Council event that has been going on for a number of years. But this is the really open stakeholder approach that we have tried to do. And the timing that we have orchestrated so properly and cleverly to match what's going on in Europe, I'm kidding, is, I think, very appropriate that we're having this discussion on some very important transatlantic issues. The distinguished panel we have here today, I will get up and introduce one by one rather than just rattle off all the bios at the beginning. But we are extremely happy to have at the beginning as our first speaker, Viola, who is the Director General of DC Connect. He is the main EU official responsible for formulating the European Commission's upcoming digital single market proposals that relates to telecoms, OTT regulation, audiovisual, copyright ban on data localization, and on the EU's engagement on internet governance generally. Prior to becoming Director General, he was Deputy Director General for DC Connect from 2012 to 2015. Prior to that, served as Chairman of European Radio Spectrum Policy. And I actually have a very impressive resume, but I'm going to do this for everybody. I'm not going to read all of it because I like to get to substantive discussion. Say just a few things about, from my perspective, although I will try to leave most of the main discussion to our colleagues. There are a lot of tremendous challenges facing the internet world as we are a global world, more and more interconnected than ever. The transatlantic relationship is, I think, at the center, and has been for years, of the growth of the internet economy. We have a great deal to work on together to hopefully build a model that can be used around the world as a good, rational, and reasonable set of guidelines and regulations where necessary to deal with what is an amazing phenomenon of our lifetime, the development, creation, and expansion of an internet economy which has a tremendous impact on all economy. I will save some comments because I really do want to move on, but let me turn this now over to the Director General, and we will, after we go through everyone's presentation, we will obviously have some questions among ourselves, and then we'll open it up for everyone.
Thank you, Ed, for your introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's a great pleasure to be here. Actually, I left Europe 1 week ago because I was in Mexico for the ministerial meeting, and I'm not sure when I return it's the same Europe I left. You were expecting me to comment on what happened. Yes, indeed, I will. What happened is something historical. Never happened that a member state that voted out. So let me say straight away, until the UK will notify to us the intention to leave the European Union, nothing legally changes. But of course, everything politically has changed. Still, I've seen some commentators discussing whether EU without the UK would be still the largest economic bloc of the world, yes or no, maybe US would overtake. I find this very tedious. I think, as Ed said, when you take the US and Europe, this is really the main axis on which the new digital revolution, the change, revolves, and it will remain so. Of course, our willingness and our wish is that the legal situation about UK is clarified as soon as possible, but it will be a complex set of negotiations, and it will take time. So the political outcome has to be translated into legal outcome. Until that very moment, the UK will remain a member state of the European Union and will have the same duties and the same privileges of all other member states. Now, said that, let me go to this dialogue. The digital single market project of the European Union, with or without the UK, of course, goes ahead and remains one of the most important priorities of Europe in the years to come. Why such a priority? Easy to guess. Everything is changing because of the dramatic disruption, positive disruption, sometimes negative disruption, introduced by the internet. Traditional industries are changing. You see this in US, it's the same in Europe, of course, and everything now is being transformed. Some call this a new industrial revolution, and if it is an industrial revolution, you have to watch out for the positive signs and also for the signs that need attention, like, for instance, I mean, the disappearance of a middle class of which have a job which you could consider traditional vis-à-vis the new economy. So I'm sure that the worries and the expectations that you have in US are shared exactly in Europe. Now, the digital single market, it's for us, hopefully the repeat of the successful introduction of a single market in Europe. And as a main feature, we'll have freedom, freedom, and freedom. So freedom to establish companies in Europe, exchange transactions, move data around, use copyright material, use the internet to transform services. It's a set of reform which is translated in partly a legal change of the European law, and we are presenting proposal as we speak, and also a policy change. So we have now focalized our budget, research budget, investment budget on few priorities, like, for instance, digitizing traditional industry, pushing for scientists and technology to use more supercomputing, investing in more reliable and resilient networks. So I'm referring to cybersecurity investments. I have read with attention the document from CCA that we will comment, achieving a thriving transatlantic digital market. And I must say, I can agree with all the points. So I hope it's going to be an easy discussion. And if I can be a bit more precise on what I do, because I thank you for the introduction. I heard you saying I'm responsible for regulating platforms, for instance. We have published a recent policy document where we said very clearly there won't be any horizontal platform regulation. So that's very clear. Then you said I'm responsible for localizing data. Actually, in November, we will present a legal proposal for free flow of data. So just to be slightly more precise, and you forgive me for being more precise, but I hope you will be glad for me being a bit more precise about this. Well, I really welcome this discussion. I'm open to, with the fellow panelists, to answer all sorts of questions you might have, including difficult questions on UK, if I'm able to answer. And let me conclude by saying where we stand. So basically, in 2016, we have delivered our strategy for digitizing industry and services. We have delivered the new rules for e-commerce. After the summer, we will, and we have delivered also the new rules for the audiovisual media services, online and offline. After the summer, we will deliver the new rules for telecom markets, the new rules for copyright, and in November, as I said, the Free Flow Data Initiative, a data ownership initiative, and by the end of the year, the new e-privacy initiative. So stay tuned with the digital single market. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Let me just quickly again introduce Joel Kaplan, who's Vice President Global Public Policy for Facebook, and responsible in that capacity with global policy strategy, working with government and non-governmental groups to foster an understanding and support for Facebook's very wide range of businesses and innovative technology. Prior to joining Facebook, Joel was Executive Vice President for Policy and External Affairs at Energy Futures Holding. And prior to that, many of us knew him when he was in the White House as Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy under President George W. Bush. And prior to that, Deputy Director of the Office of OMB. Again, I am skipping over a lot of other highlights, but we're really pleased to have Joel with us here. One of the leading companies in our industry and leading the charge on, frankly, figuring out how our industry and our companies interact with the tremendous challenges that we face as governments around the world adjust to the new economy. Joel.
Thanks, Ed. Is this working? I have very brief informal remarks. I think I'll do them sitting, if that's okay. Thank you for hosting us here today. Thank you to the Director General for coming to participate in this dialogue, especially with so much going on in the EU. Really appreciate the chance to be here and participate. Even before last week, but especially after the developments of last week, it's a real moment of opportunity for leadership, I think, on both sides of the Atlantic on the issues of the digital economy. After the vote in the UK, we know we're meeting at a moment of some uncertainty and concern, and I'm hopeful, and Facebook is hopeful, that the progress and the work that the Director General talked about will proceed as he described it, because we think it offers a real opportunity for technology to bring people together. Not just within the EU, but across the Atlantic. And so we're very hopeful and optimistic about the leadership that DG Connect and the Commission will provide on that front. Obviously, the vote last week demonstrated, as some of the discussion here in the U.S. does, that there are real concerns with migration, with globalization, with the economic impacts of those phenomena. And we believe that technology really does offer an opportunity to continue driving progress. And we see it, at Facebook. We have about 50 million small businesses using Facebook alone, driving economic growth, much of that in the EU. And it's not just economic growth that technology drives, it's voice, it's the opportunity for people to participate, whether it's in referenda or voting or pushing, raising your voice about inequality or supporting political reform. All of these things are being empowered by the technologies that exist today, the new technologies that exist today. And we also recognize that some of those technologies do contribute and create anxieties, whether it's about intrusiveness of technology or challenges to civil liberties or privacy, or fear of the impact on jobs. And we're just hopeful that Europe will continue to lead, because we think it is in a great position to lead, on maximizing the benefits of technology while minimizing those risks and the things that people are concerned about. The digital single market effort is, I think, obviously the most promising opportunity to create, to take advantage of the really well-developed knowledge economies that exist in Europe, as well as the world-class research institutions. At Facebook, we have over 1,400 employees now at our international headquarters in Dublin. We've got engineering offices and data centers on the continent. Last year, we invested in a new artificial intelligence research laboratory in Paris. So we're heavily invested, and we're really hopeful and optimistic that the things that the Director General talked about, the 10 agenda items that exist here on the CCIA agenda, that those things can come to fruition and over the next year or two. And most immediate on the horizon, and the thing that we're most focused on is the progress that the Commission and the Commerce Department have made on Privacy Shield. If we can get that done, now would be a really good time, I think, to introduce some certainty about the future of transatlantic data flows, which are critical to not just businesses like ours and larger technology companies, but also to thousands and thousands of small businesses that rely on the ability for data to flow freely, not just within the borders of the European Union, but across the Atlantic. And so we're hopeful that that first step in creating a digital single market that operates freely and allows data to travel freely with the U.S. Will happen quickly. And so we look forward to progress on that, and look forward to participating in all of the other important consultations that DG Connect and the Commission have underway.
Thank you, Joel. Next, we have Alan Davidson, who is the first Director of Digital Economy at the U.S. Department of Commerce and the Senior Advisor to the Secretary of Commerce. Prior to joining the Commerce Department, Alan was a director of the Open Technology Institute at the New America Foundation and also a research affiliate at MIT, Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence. For quite a few years, however, Alan was most known in Washington as the person who opened and led the Google Office of Public Affairs in Washington, and prior to that, he had been at Center for Democracy and Technology. Like all of our panels, I've not read any academic credentials, but the degrees in both public policy and engineering and science of everyone on the panel is significant, and I'll not read them individually. Alan.
Thank you, Ed. And as we often do in the digital economy, I will follow the lead of the private sector and stay seated. Thank you, CCIA, for having us. It's a real pleasure to be here, and I will also say congratulations to CCIA on the terrific paper that was released today, and actually really on your years of leadership in this space. And we're very pleased to be part of this conversation. A couple of overarching points to start. First of all, Europe and the US have been and remain essential partners in promoting a shared vision of a free and open internet around the world. For 20 years, we've pursued this shared vision of a digital economy. It's a vision predicated on, first and foremost, a decentralized, free and open internet, a digital economy that allows access to information across borders and regardless of frontiers. It's one that allows innovation without permission, that embraces a multi-stakeholder model of approaching internet governance. And it's one that very strongly promotes trust online, including privacy, security, intellectual property rights, consistent with these values. We've pursued these approaches in part because they are a reflection of our shared values, but also because we know that they make people's lives better. And we've had our differences in, I would say, and they're sometimes non-trivial differences in approach to some of these issues. But in the grand sweep, we are really, we have much in common, and we have common cause in promoting this vision of a free and open digital economy around the world. And I say that because these views are not globally, universally held, right? And we are at a moment in the evolution of the digital economy where we really need to make the normative case to the world about these values. And around the world, we do see these attempts to control the content that people see, to limit the services they get access to force data localization in unreasonable ways, and to move away from the multi-stakeholder model of governance. And those kinds of efforts, as we see them, undermine this shared vision that we've had for the last few decades of what the digital economy and the internet can be like. And so we remain, and I think it's just important to underscore, even in these times of change, essential partners in this project of promoting that broad vision. The second is, the digital economy is going to be critical for the future economic success of both our continents. And we've had strong cooperation on digital economy issues for a lot of reasons. There's billions of dollars of trade between Europe and the US every day. There's $260 billion in digital services trade alone annually. And so I'll just say a couple of quick words, and I'm sure we'll get to them, about some of the topics that have come up recently about this. Digital single market is certainly one of them. We've been encouraged from the beginning by this as an opportunity to fuel growth in Europe and the transatlantic digital economy. We've supported strongly the stated goals of the digital single market. And we've appreciated Europe's and the Commission's stated approach of diminishing walls within Europe without creating new walls around Europe. And there have been a series of documents, as the Director General stated, that have come out, and we find much of it encouraging. And I'd note, for example, things like the approach to platforms and avoiding horizontal regulation. Some of the other issues around a measured approach to geo-blocking, for example, where there had been a lot of concern, and I think the Commission has stated it's taking a very data-driven approach, and we really appreciate that. We've also had some areas of concern that we're watching. The Secretary of Commerce, Secretary Pritzker, was in Mexico last week at the OECD, spoke to Vice President Ansip about some of these, including things like in the audiovisual services paper, there was we always worry when we see things like quotas around content, local content. And those are areas that, and we can talk more about some of these, where I'm sure we'll have further conversations, and we'd like to stay engaged. But on balance, we've been really encouraged, and we salute our colleagues and their efforts in this space, and hope to engage with them going forward. A second big area of work together has definitely been, as Joel said, the Privacy Shield agreement, and we can talk more about it. As many of you know, this has been the result of 2 years of really intense work with our partners in Europe. It represents, we think, a significant achievement for consumers in terms of promoting privacy, but also for individuals and businesses by eliminating the costly uncertainty that is facing them now, and we know that companies have faced. And we've worked hard to make sure that the new framework provides those strong privacy protections that the EU legal system requires. Since the release of the Article 29 Data Protection Working Group's opinion on Privacy Shield, we've worked very closely with the Commission to address some of the key issues that it raises, and we have some new proposals that have now been transmitted to the Commission, to the member states, I should say, and we're hopeful of their good attention in this area. We've not crossed the finish line yet. The member states are expected to vote soon. We know that they have meetings on the 29th of June, July 4th. But we are confident that we've created a framework that meets the standards of the European courts, and based on our extensive engagement with the member states over the past few months, we believe that they agree to. Finally, I just wanted to say a word about the vote last week and the developments with the UK. As the President has said, the people of the United Kingdom have spoken, and we respect their decision. The special relationship between the US and the UK remains a bedrock of US security and foreign policy, and it's just as vital today as it was last week. Likewise, the European Union, as I've said, remains an indispensable partner for the United States in stimulating economic growth and addressing regional and global issues and challenges. And as the UK and the EU begin this measured process of negotiating the UK's departure from the European Union, we look forward to working with both London and Brussels to ensure continued stability, security, and prosperity in Europe and around the world. In the digital context, both the UK and the European Union have been, together and separately, strong voices for this shared vision of a free and open digital society, and we expect that to continue. To conclude, I just say, we're working together. We look forward to strengthening the trust and confidence in the online world. That's what's going to drive our digital future. And as I said at the start, we are essential partners here in promoting this shared vision, and we look forward to continuing that for many years to come.
Thank you. Next, we have Richard Nohe. Richard is the Chief Legal Officer at British Telecom for the Americas. He's in that capacity responsible for all the legal, government, compliance, and regulatory issues for the company. Obviously, a unique position today after the last week as a British company based, and I'm sure you're going to get a little follow-up questions on that. But we've known Rich for a long time. He had served previously Metro Media Fiber Network, and for quite a few years had been head of NTT, where he was VP of Law and Strategy and General Manager. Richard, I'm going to let you go on into it, and
Yeah, sure.
thank you.
Well, it's certainly clear that from the vote last week that there's a lot of uncertainty, and I think from BT's perspective, the important thing is really to ensure stability for our customers and to seek consistency among the markets. And clearly BT operates in 180 jurisdictions around the world. We are in the US, obviously, and have a fairly large footprint in the UK and Europe as well. So it's important for us to really participate in the dialogue around the digital single market, because it allows us a forum to exchange our views on a number of critical topics. Technology is immune to geopolitics, and I think that's something that we need to keep in mind as we go through this uncertain period of time in front of us. And the important thing is that we need a strategy that takes into account both consumer as well as business needs. And any parts of that strategy need to be built on a view of how to have better regulation, as well as how to design the regulation to spur innovation and competitiveness. The Telecoms Framework Review provides an opportunity to modernize, building on what we've done to date and the successes that we've seen in that area, in order to meet the challenges for investment and competition, not only in the fixed line but also in the mobile market, along with the convergence in telecoms and the new services that we're seeing brought to market. The cornerstone of the current regime relies on competition law principles, and the mechanisms for addressing bottlenecks are sound and should not be diluted. Consistent implementation of remedies should be prioritized over interventions, which could make the regulatory decisions arbitrary and fragmented. Similarly, BT has been grateful for the strides in the US that the FCC has made towards reforming business data services. Such reform must be based on a competition model that reflects real-world conditions. Business data services are a critical input into the internet value chain, and our multinational customers rely on services to transport data around the world in a secure network. Therefore, we must have infrastructure that is innovative, competitive, and affordable. For the same reason, BT supports ambitious trade agreements, including TTIP and TISA, that ban data localization requirements, support the free flow of data across borders, and update rules in a manner that is fit for the 21st century. For the digital economy to thrive, we must look across borders and seek consistency that will spur investment, competition, and innovation. As Brexit clearly shows, we can't predict the future, but we can rely on traditional notions of competition and better regulation when looking to maximize the gains for the digital economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Next, back to the government side, where we are honored to have from the State Department Julie Zoller, who is the Senior Deputy Coordinator for International Communication and Information Policy at the State Department. Julie succeeded, I think, someone, again, many of us knew for many years, Richard Beard, at State. In the past, Julie had served Office of Spectrum Management at NTIA, as well as, again, a long list of both public and private sector positions of responsibility in this area. Julie, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for inviting me here today to discuss the challenges, but more importantly, the opportunities the transatlantic digital market brings. Thank you especially, Ed, to you and the Computer Communications and Industry Association for hosting this event. Ambassador Sepulveda sends his regrets that he's not able to be here today, but looks forward to the discussions tomorrow. Digital policies are an increasingly important aspect of our relationship with the European Union and its member states, receiving attention from the highest levels of the U.S. government. The discussions we'll have this week at the U.S.-EU Information Society Dialogue are a high priority for us. In the context of the referendum last week that made world headlines, this is a good opportunity for me as a State Department official to reiterate the strong and collaborative relationship we have with the European Union and its member states. Our bilateral trade grows every year, as do our shared priorities on the world stage. Transatlantic digital services trade stands at $260 billion per year, an increasingly important part of our economic relationship. Of course, all business today is digital, and that's why data flows are so important. For us to reach our shared goal of maximizing the transatlantic digital economy, we will need to work together to ensure the right policies are in place to promote innovation and economic growth. As has been noted, while we sometimes have differences in our approach, we share the same goals and principles. We both seek to keep the internet open, interoperable, secure, and reliable. We both support expanding connectivity around the world and share a commitment to the multi-stakeholder model of internet governance. Both of us want to maintain digital policies in the United States and the EU that lead to improved opportunities for both European and U.S. businesses and consumers. Likewise, reducing market fragmentation and barriers and promoting investment in technology and digital infrastructure are common objectives. The Digital Single Market Plan put forth by the European Commission sets forth the vision for a European Union with fewer internal barriers to digital trade and a digital transformation of industry and society. The United States supports these goals. We also appreciate the Commission's commitment to working with stakeholders and listening to their concerns and ideas. And we look forward to learning more about the European Commission's plans in our discussion. Through Privacy Shield, we are addressing the need for efficient transatlantic data flows. Our negotiators have worked hard on the framework, and we look forward to approval by member states. Data transfers underpin every aspect of the modern transatlantic economy. So it was critical to reach agreement on a robust data flow framework that will allow the transatlantic economy to reach its full potential. We also look forward to exploring how we can advance our shared goal to expand connectivity around the world through programs like the Global Connect initiative, which aims to bring online the next 1.5 billion people by 2020. I draw your attention to the executive order on global entrepreneurship issued Friday, which features Global Connect prominently. Both Director General Viola and I have just returned from a very productive series of meetings in Cancun and the OECD Ministerial on the digital economy. The Cancun Declaration declares our mutual support for the free flow of information, the preservation of the fundamental openness of the internet, and the ongoing need for open, transparent, and inclusive multi-stakeholder processes. And it speaks to the continuing need for strong evidence-based analysis that is the hallmark of OECD work. The United States and the European Union have a rich agenda this year. Secretary Kerry is in Brussels today, meeting with European Union officials on a range of global issues key to the US-EU partnership. We look forward to working together in the coming months toward a successful ITU World Telecommunications Standardization Assembly in Tunisia and a robust dialogue at the Internet Governance Forum in Mexico later this year. We also have a very full agenda with our European partners that includes achieving significant progress on the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership with the next round in Brussels next month. We're delighted to have this opportunity this week to make progress toward our common goals and to further strengthen our close relationship. Thank you very much.